to the suspect in the mass shooting at Emanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina. This 21-year-old man allegedly fled that church last night after having shot and killed 9 people there. He was on the run for 14 hours before he was finally caught today in the city of Shelby, North Carolina. He had crossed state lines. But the civilian who pursued him and followed him and did not let him get away until he was arrested by police, that person works here at Frady's Florist Shop in Kings Mountain, North Carolina. She is a florist. Her name is Debbie Dills. And here's how she said she did it. Debbie Dills says she was late leaving for work this morning. She was running late when she left her house in the city of Gastonia, North Carolina. She said she'd been on the road for about 10 miles or so when she recognized a car traveling in her same direction on the highway. And she thought to herself, quote, "I've seen that car for some reason." I look over, and it's got a South Carolina tag on it. I thought, nah, that's not his car. Then I got closer, and I saw that haircut. I was nervous. I had the worst feeling. Is that him, or is that not him? Remember, this is hundreds of miles away from the site of that shooting, which happened in a totally different state. There was no particular reason for that florist in North Carolina to think that she was going to see the suspect's car from that shooting. But when she saw that car, she says she had a hunch that this was the guy. So, as you do, she decided personally that she would tail him. She says she followed him. She followed him on the highway until she got to the exit she had to take for work. She called her boss, who called the police, but then she exited to go to work. What else could she do, right? And that was supposed to be that. Until florist Debbie Dills, having taken the exit off the highway, decided no. Actually, no. Something didn't feel right to her. She decided she needed to make sure that if that really was the guy, she was going to make sure that he got caught. So she did a U-turn, turned her car around, got back on the highway, and sped up trying to find him. Tried to catch up to him and find him again. She says, quote, "It kept eating at me, and something told me to keep following him." So she did. And she kept following him for something like 15 miles until she spotted his car again. She had been looking for him. She found him again. And so off she went again, following him for several more miles until, at this point, still on the phone with her boss, who was still on the phone with the police, she finally saw the sirens coming in. She saw the police sirens. She knew they'd got him. She ended up staying near the scene where they pulled him over until she actually saw him being arrested and taken into custody. All told, florist Debbie Dills followed the suspect in this mass shooting on her own for something like 35 miles.
It's nothing to do with me. I'm telling you, the Lord had me where I needed to be on 74. He had me watching the news. He had me to see all that. He did that. It's not about Debbie. It's not at all. It's not about Todd. We did what good citizens should do. That's what I think.
The story of how this guy was caught, hundreds of miles away from the shooting in a different state, is amazing in part because Debbie the florist trailed him for miles on a hunch to make absolutely sure he didn't get away. To the point of even staying there while the police arrested him to make sure they didn't let him go. But what happened today is also amazing in part just because the suspect in this case is still alive to have been caught in the first place. That's an anomaly. One thing mass acts of violence have in common in our recent history as a country is that the people who commit them usually end up dead too. Lots of times, they kill themselves. If they don't kill themselves, they're often killed by police. Most people who commit crimes like this suspect in South Carolina do not survive their own shootings. But when they do survive, sometimes by remarkably circuitous and strange circumstances, they get caught. Sometimes by florists who happen to nag themselves about turning around and making sure that what they thought they saw was really what they saw. And so tonight, back in South Carolina now, 21-year-old Dylan Roof is caught. He was flown there earlier this evening from North Carolina, where he was captured. They sent him back across state lines. The chase of this story seems to be over now, but the process now, from here on out, the long, devastating public legal process of trying him is just about to start. Dylan Roof is set to appear in court tomorrow for the first time. And you know what? Just like Jared Lee Loughner, who shot and killed 6 people and wounded 13 others, including a sitting member of Congress in Arizona in 2011, And just like Jahar Tsarnaev, who killed 4 people and wounded 280 others in April 2013, and just like James Holmes, who's on trial now for the movie theater mass shooting in Aurora, Colorado in 2012, and whose trial is so grueling and traumatic for the people who've been sitting through it each day, for those who have to testify and relive that experience, and for the jurors who have to ultimately decide his fate. It's been so grueling and traumatic that the court has had to provide therapy dogs for anybody who needs them. I mean, just like all of those guys before him, Dylann Roof's legal process is now underway. And undoubtedly, it will leave its own unique kind of trauma in its wake. One part of the tragedy in Charleston, South Carolina is over. The suspect is in custody now. But a new and different type of trauma is just beginning. The long, wrenching legal process that will likely wreak its own kind of devastation in its own way for the people who have to work to bring legal closure and some semblance of legal order and justice to this tragedy, that is what starts now. And it can only start now